Today we will study about resource allocation graph to detect the allocation that is done by an operating system to a process. Now, the resource allocation graph, it is a pictorial representation of the state of a system. Now, as the name suggests, the resource allocation graph is the complete information about the process that hold some resource or waiting for some resource. Now, in a resource allocation graph, the process is represented by a circle, while the resource is represented by a rectangle. Now, in a resource allocation graph, we have vertices and edges. So, vertices are of two types. One is process vertex, another one is resource vertex. Now, the resource can be of two type. We can say that it is of single instance, example CPU, or it is of multiple instance, for example registers. Now now in a resource allocation graph, the edges can be of two types. One is assign edge, and the another one is request edge. In the assign edge, we have a resource, then it is allocated to a process pi. In a request, the process pi tend towards the resource. Now, when the arrow is from process to resource, it is a request edge, and when the arrow is from resource to process, then it is a assign edge. Now, a resource is shown as assigned to a process if the tail of the arrow is attached to the instance to the resource and the head is attached to a process. So we have a process, we have a resource. Now process is requesting for a resource, and we have a process, we have a resource. Now here the resource is assigned to a process. So let us consider a resource allocation graph. In this we have three processes, P1, P2, P3, and we have a resource R1 and we have a resource R2. So let us see this resource allocation graph. Now the resource are having one instance. According to the graph, R1 is being used by P1, P2 is holding a resource R2, and P2 is waiting for a resource R1, P3 is waiting for a resource R1, and P3 is also waiting for a resource R2. So according to this graph, resource allocation graph is deadlock free, as there is no cycle is being formed in the graph. So this is the resource allocation graph. Thank you very much.